What's up guys, KPlays here. Just wanted to wish you all a happy Monster Hunter 20th anniversary. A little sad that it's not coming with anything about Monster Hunter Wilds, but at least we knew beforehand that there'd be no news this week. Summer can't come fast enough. To commemorate the event though, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own history with the series. It's really funny to me thinking back on it, because the way I found out about it was 100% random chance, and now here I am making videos on it because it's become one of my favorite games hands down. At times over the years it's even been pretty much the only game I was playing. And it's been pretty cool watching it grow from a small cult following in the West all the way to the huge international blow-up it is today. It's really just that good, and with any luck we'll have years and years more of it ahead of us. As for where my journey started though, way back in 2010 during a high school music program competition, my school's group was sitting in the audience watching the other groups perform. A row ahead of us I happened to catch a little kid super into some game on his PSP. Peeking over his shoulder I saw a prehistoric hunter guy shooting arrows at a giant hermit crab wearing a dinosaur skull as a shell. It's pretty funny that that's a pretty normal scene to me now, but back then it was like a fever dream or something. I wasn't about to randomly bug this kid about what game he was playing, but it was just so bizarrely out there that I just had to find out what it was. I mean, why not, right? I just recently got a PSP for my birthday, and I was looking for some games to play. Some Google searching and a trip to GameStop later, I had a copy of Monster Hunter Freedom Unite on my hands. I was sold, literally on day one. It was such a different playstyle gameplay from pretty much everything else I had at the time. You, thrown out into the wild, expected to just go out and beat up giant monsters so you could turn them into a fresh new outfit, and a fancier knife so you can go out and do it all again. Sometimes I wish I still had my PSP so I could revisit my first game. But then I remember that Freedom Unite is extremely clunky compared to later games, and I think, yeah, let's not taint those fond memories. But anyways, back then I was pretty much using everything besides Longsword. Who knows, maybe even back then part of me was avoiding what would eventually become the counter-spamming Weep Sword. New weapon, new gameplay, searching for what I like best, but finding all of it fun because I just couldn't get enough of Monster Hunter as a whole. That said though, it sounds cliche saying it out loud, but Hunting Horn stuck out to me right from the start. Like I mentioned earlier, I was in a lot of the school's music programs, and I was also very into martial arts at the time. So to pick up this game and find out that there's a musical instrument that you can just beat monsters with while playing music, just too perfect to be true. I wasn't quite ready to play it almost exclusively like I do now, because as I got further into the game, harder monsters weren't really giving me a chance to use the original slower recital mode. Being new and inexperienced, I didn't realize that the low damage potential was probably also giving me issues, but back then and even now, I didn't really care because fun is fun. That said, if I got trampled one more time trying to play Dance Dance Revolution in front of an angry dragon just because I wanted to buff back up, it was going to be a problem. Luckily for me though, I found Portable Third around the same time I was getting a little annoyed at my favorite playstyle wasn't cutting it. The reworked song mechanics make things a lot easier and smoother to use, and if it wasn't for all the other weapons getting moveset revamps too, and Switch X being added as a fancy new toy to try, I probably would have became a Hunting Horn main right then and there. I ended up sticking with Portable Third until 3 Ultimate came out. Try was one of the games I bought and ended up returning almost right away because of the low monster roster and the random removal of half the weapons. 3 Ultimate made the situation a little better by bringing back the full weapon roster, but honestly, even though I was hooked by then and I still played the hell out of it, 3rd gen as a whole was probably my least favorite time with Monster Hunter because of one thing, the water combat. It's a shame because the aquatic monsters and map areas were amazing, but when it came to the combat I hated it. It wasn't really fun feeling like I had to fight both the monster and the controls whenever I went for a swim. For every water monster I'd just sigh, grab a lance, clear the hunt for story completion, and then never touch it again. You can probably guess how much fun I had with Dire Morales and Sineas being final story bosses. Got them out of the way like the rest, but since it always felt like there was a chunk of the game that was more chore than fun, I ended up going back to Portable Third for the rest of my 3rd gen experience. Then we get the 4th gen. Skipping over the time we all spent being jealous about Monster Hunter 4 not being released in the West, this time period was big for me because it was my first time I started to interact with the Monster Hunter community. Back then, most of my real life friends were into the more popular games at the time, you know, your Call of Duty, your Halo, your Pokemon, so the internet was my main option to talk about Monster Hunter and link up for multiplayer hunts. I met a ton of awesome people from then until now on Reddit, GameFAQs, Discord, and YouTube. They're honestly too much to mention without this video dragging on for ages, but I just wanted to quickly give a huge thanks to all the people I interacted with for the fun hunts and forum discussions. What sticks out in my head the most from back then is probably the 4 Ultimate GameFAQs boards. There were some pretty interesting times back then. For all you guys that were around at the time, you know, that's some deep lore, core memory type of stuff. But anyway, before this point I was playing Monster Hunter a lot, but still only casually. Opening up to all the other players and deeper info out there was what really built me up as a proper hunter throughout 4 Ultimate and Generations. Generations Ultimate I unfortunately didn't end up getting to play a ton of because it took a few years to get released outside Japan, and a lot was going on for me then too. The biggest being going to college, moving out of state, and getting engaged and eventually married. My wife doesn't play, Yet, she's more of a Kingdom Hearts and Katamari kind of girl, and according to her, watching me build a set looks like doing taxes. But she does love watching me play or listening to me talk about the game, and thinks Gunlands looks pretty cool, so who knows, one of these days we might get her to join us. Would be especially great considering that around the time we moved in together, I decided to make KPlaysHere. I felt like I'd learned enough about the games by then, and I wanted to share it with new players like other players shared with me when I joined the community. One forum post or Reddit thread at a time was great and all, but YouTube was an option that could spread advice a lot further, with visual examples on top of that. Speedrunning also looked absolutely amazing, so I wanted to give that a shot too. I couldn't before without any capturing equipment, but with World kicking off 5th gen on next-gen consoles with built-in recording software, it was as good a time as any. Monster Hunter bursting out into mainstream gaming with the same title was an unexpected bonus. I finally shifted from trying out bow and the then newest weapons Insect Glaive and Charge Blade to a full-time hunting ornament, and that's part of what gave me the last big push to create the channel. With a wave of new players came a wave of people coming from games where support means sit in the background buffing and healing. Plenty of misinformation based on that sped around too, so it was nice to do what I could to set some new players on the right track. Again, other longtime players did it for me, so it just felt right to return the favor. The 5th gen blow up and the evolution of the series as a whole was a cool thing to see as a longtime player that was around from before. World and Iceborne were amazingly theatrical, and Rise and Sunbreak were a huge change of pace, especially as a hunting horn user. Rise and Sunbreak putting me back to square one on the recording situation kinda sucked, thanks Nintendo, but fortunately now I'm all set up to record and share my current and future Monster Hunter journey with all of you guys, no matter what console it's on. I appreciate anyone that's been following along with me so far, and I hope there will be a lot more. But setting the channel aside for a second though, taking this time to look back, I realized that Monster Hunter has been around in my life for a long time. We're not going to get sappy and say that it helped me through any tough times or anything like that, but I gotta give credit where credit is due that over 14 years, no other series grabbed my attention as hard or gave me nearly as many good times. I like to think that whether you were into it since the early days like I was, or just found out about it once it hit the big leagues a few years ago, that you all are having just as much fun as I've been. And here's to a lot more. I mean, who knows, maybe in a decade when we're celebrating the 30th anniversary, I could teach my kids to play Monster Hunter 9 or 10 or something. With how big the series has gotten, it's a real possibility things could go that far now. It's fun to think about. A hunter can dream. But for now, let's look towards the nearer future with what Monster Hunter Wilds has for us this summer and next year. Until then, this has been yet another KPlays, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.